right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the training, learning, and development community. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, I see Darcy there in the audience, and there are a few other people that are in. And I know we had a big notification that just went out. Oops, there, I heard my little notification show up. And so we should have a few people popping in. Welcome, everybody. Thanks again for coming to the training, learning, and development community. We're here talking to the founders of IDLance. We've got Parker Grant and Andrea Dottling. We've had both of you on TLDC in the past, and we actually even had an event that featured the two of you. It was a freelancing event. And today we're going to be just talking mostly about IDLance. And I'm really curious about IDLance because I know that when we first talked, and it's been a couple of years, maybe when you first came onto the broadcast, it was sort of, I think IDLance was relatively, I don't know, new, but just sort of like evolving and had recently just been and started. But now I was looking at the website, I was coming up with some questions for you, and I'm like, wow, this is like fully formed. This is amazing. You guys have obviously been really, really busy for a while. So I've got a set of questions in the Q&A area. And if anybody, Joe, if you have any questions at all for Parker and Andrea, drop them in. We're going to talk about freelance instructional design. And mostly, let's start with inspiration behind IDLance.com. What happened there?
So it was Parker's idea, but I like to think maybe my sharing of my struggles freelancing with Parker inspired his idea. But I still remember the phone call at like when you called me to be like, hey, I have this idea, of what we can do to help people transition from being full-time instructional designers to freelance, whether it's side gigging or going full-time. And we met on he gave me my first ID freelance job ever, writing text message courses. And I feel like ever since we started working together, we just kind of it just clicked. And I think that project specifically was kind of inspiring because it was all down to earth, like all the tone of all the text messages. We were learning these complex concepts and breaking them down into text messages. It got to be conversational and kind of funny. And so that writing style of doing that has informed, like the IDLance since the beginning, of just breaking down all of this, sometimes gated information, sometimes like stuffy LinkedIn expert type stuff when it comes to either the field of instructional design or running a freelance business in the field. We were just like, hey, it can be really hard to break into and really overwhelming and intimidating. And I was going through that at the time because I was a new freelancer. And I was like, I don't know who to trust. I'm trying to set up informational calls, but I feel like if I'm not acting or saying the exact right things, people are going to write me off, or it was just overwhelming. And so, we just had this idea to make it as just down to earth, approachable, and empathetic as possible.
Awesome.
Yes.
So how long ago was that?
Oh, was it 2019?
Yeah, it was 2019 is when we started working together, right? So that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago.
4 years. Yeah, but we officially started the business in 2020.
Parker, why Andrea? Why did you choose Andrea for that particular job?
Okay, well, at the time, the contract required several writers, so she was one of 5 writers at the time, and Andrea's writing style stood out way above the rest. And at the same time, I was looking to figure out how to tap into a market that I was noticing where people were starting to appreciate the work from home kind of role. This is before the pandemic, remember that?
Yeah.
There was that movement of people wanting to do more remote work as full-time designers. And at that role.
Oh, you're cutting out a bit.
Sorry.
You cut out a little bit.
Yeah, okay. You cut out a little bit there. Sorry, just repeat that last bit.
So when you're working from home, a lot of things happen. And that is you start to reflect, is this the kind of career I want to keep doing for the rest of my life as a full-time employee? And if you are working from home, you start questioning, like, well, can I really do this myself? Like, could I work for other businesses and do this and have more flexibility? So I felt like there was this kind of movement going on. And when I saw Andrea's talent, I said, oh man, let's talk. So because I was thinking maybe we could co-create a curriculum. And we did that. We, created a lot of lessons, and we established an account with LearnDash WordPress and started offering membership type of subscription-based offerings where people can come in and take these lessons. Now, we've changed the business model since then, but that's how we started. And we just sort of organically grew from that type of community. So we would focus on people first, and then the clients came later. So we were focused on the freelancers, or those who were looking to jump into freelancing, and it just sort of grew into a pool of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And companies were saying, hey, you got all these freelancers, could you do this for us? So that's sort of how it evolved.
So what qualifies you to be able to help freelancers, instructional designers specifically?
Mm-hmm. Well, so that it's actually a really good question, because what I was going to say, even if you didn't ask that, is when I was starting out as a freelancer, I kind of went like all in. So I had a full-time job for a while, and I side gigged for a really long time. And I actually have realized since then, since doing official instructional design freelancing, that even before that, I was freelancing doing other things. I've kind of always had multiple jobs or gigs at the same time, but I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing. I didn't realize I was running a business. Like, I had a job in New York, and when I moved to Florida, I convinced them to let me keep that job as a contractor. I didn't even know that that was a thing, or that that was a possibility, until it happened. And then I was freelancing for a learning center, just doing social media. And so when I started doing instructional design and realizing, hey, that's a field, I, was able to like work in higher ed, but then freelance corporate. So basically I've been doing this for longer than I even realized. And then what I really wanted to work with Parker on is I was the only earner in my family, and I had a kid who was home full time with me, and I was trying to go to grad school. And I just realized, like, I need to control my time and I need to control my life. And when I've seen how that's changed my life, having that full-time job, even in side gigging, and then transitioning to having my own business. And I just felt like I wanted to, like, go to people and be like, you can change, like, if you're not happy with what you're doing, like, you can change it. Like, you can take more control of your career, your income, and all of that. And it sounds like, it sounds too good to be true, but I'm just excited about it because I made it happen, because I was out of necessity, but also I was like, I want to be able to spend time with my child, and I want to do what I like. And to be honest, I was hitting my cap at like 2 to 4 years at a job. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm kind of bored. I want to do something else. And that's just my personality. And so when I would meet people like that, I'd be like, hey, just do these things. And so when Parker came to me and was like, hey, let's make this idea official. Here's my idea. I was like, oh, I'm kind of already trying to help other people do this. So it was cool that we got to come together and make it official and have that official curriculum. And then now to see where people who were in our community from the beginning and what they're doing now and how they've grown their business, it's been awesome.
That's great. Yeah, like and Joe saying that she loves the variety of multiple gigs. So especially if you're one of those types of people that like doing sort of gig work, just you get that freedom as a freelance instructional designer. And so I'm just curious, like, so did the pandemic sort of accelerate how you ended up evolving IDLance.com?
Yeah, they sort of, well, the actual pandemic itself has obviously created a situation where more people are working from home.
Yeah.
And again, if people go through a reflection of their life, are they going through a reset? Are they really liking what they do? And a lot of the people, especially teachers, found, hey, I could go into ID and make that move into work from home kind of a job. So there was obviously a mass exodus of teachers becoming IDs. And so the other thing is the companies, as we were growing, companies were increasingly reaching out to us to ask for support. And basically, the support we give to clients are like managed services. So we would provide a team, and we would have a QA specialist, we'll have instructional designers, we'll have graphic artists, we have developers, and sometimes we have video producers or videographers. And, you know, it depends on the job and the client. So I think our specialty was being able to create a community, find out who has certain talents, and work with those people and bring them to the clients that we serve. And that was a great way to help them start their own businesses, become more confident in freelancing, and the clients were appreciating the talents that they got. So it's the pandemic has certainly helped accelerate that.
Yeah, it all totally makes sense. I do want to add, Andrea, you'd mentioned in chat, you said Parker has been running his own business for a long time after a successful corporate career. So more than qualified, especially compared to you. So talk a little bit about that, Parker, your background and running your own business.
Yeah, so I started my career right out of undergrad school as a mechanical engineer. And never did I imagine that I'd be here today as an owner of an agency, a learning development agency. But, you know, you start early in life, you pick a career that you think you're going to love. And I actually did like it. I worked for a company that manufactured jet engines right here in Connecticut. And I did that for about 5 years as an engineer. And I felt that there was a time when I wanted to get out of the engineering playground and move into something that's more people oriented. So in mechanical engineering, what you're doing is just solving problems around parts or products. But in L&D, you're solving problems around people. So it's a different kind of a shift. But I fell in love with the training industry because I happened to be volunteering with a friend of mine back in 1992. This was a while ago, 31 years ago. That's when I started L&D. And so we were just doing some classes in the evenings to teach high school students about engineering principles. And that's when I fell in love with training. I made a lateral move in a company, the same company I was working for engineering, into the training department. And I learned how to become an instructional designer, a in-class trainer, you know, IoT kind of thing. And I also learned how to, you know, develop CBT. Back then it was computer-based training. You know, that was interesting. So and then I became a training manager, and I got to become an L&D manager overseeing 7,000 people for their learning initiative. So overall, the career that I had was 21 years in corporate, 16 out of 21 was in L&D. And then I started my own business in 2008-ish, maybe it was 2007. But so I learned a lot of what not to do and what to do in the freelance business. And finally, it just culminates into something I can share back with the world.
Wow. That's fantastic. And I know we do have a broadcast where we talk specifically with you about your background and your history. And I do find it fascinating that you went from engineering to L&D. I don't see that switch over at all, you know, so that's very, very cool. So IDLance, how do you support freelance instructional designers?
Good question. So we have the heart of everything probably is our community, is the Slack community. And we post gigs there that we have, other people post gigs that they have or that they've seen, but it's probably as down to earth as it possibly can be, because we'll talk about everything from like, hey, I've got this tricky client situation, what would you do? Or do you want to look at my portfolio? Or hey, it's my kid's first day of school. Like, and we're all kind of bonding on all these different levels. But what is good about that is, yes, it's nice to have people that you can talk to when you feel lonely as a freelancer during the day. But there's kind of this sort of really great thing that happens when, even though you're just interacting through Slack or through community events, we're getting to know people as individuals, which is helping us get to know them when we have gigs to offer. So when we are staffing and running projects, we get to know people's experience, their personalities, because honestly, personality is a huge thing for us. It's just that kind of positive energy that we can put on on projects, because someone can always, learn to be better at some of the skills. But we while we have somebody on a gig, we're also sort of mentoring them on the business side. So we're helping them figure out how to get different, get other clients, or hey, change their resume. We had someone, we have a new certification program that we just graduated our first group of people. And what I love about it, which seems not real and seems like, hey, there must be strings attached, is that no, it's free for the people who join it, because it behooves us to have the best freelancers, because then we can do more projects and do bigger projects and keep scaling the way we've been scaling. But one of my favorite things that is a great example of how we've helped is like one of our cohort people from this first group went from maybe one contract or not much to basically they're like, I need a bookkeeper now. But in the time that we've been working with them, and that's from like helping them with their resume, confidence, LinkedIn strategy. And what we're really trying to do is cut out all of the kind of stuffiness of talking about running a business and the kind of like kissing butts to like get certain information or advice, and just say, hey, like, we're all people. There's plenty of work for everyone. Let's just talk about the actual practical things that you can do to run your business and keep it going and being successful. And also just being an empathetic kind of ear for people to like talk about whatever they need to when it comes to running a freelance business or even instructional design stuff. Because in the cohort, we talk about ID skills, we talk about client relation skills, which I think that's my favorite topic. And then also the actual mechanics of a business. So like, do you, get an LLC? What do you do? We're of course not like, experts on like taxes and things like that, but we can say, hey, here's what's worked for us, find a tax professional, how to set yourself up for success. And that's kind of where we aim, is we start with the community and like growing those people, and then the business and sort of working with new clients. It's just kind of like we draw it, I wouldn't say magnetize, I don't know. It's like magnetic, right? I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, that community, as you said, Andrea, is so critical to the success, because, think of it this way. How do you typically hire people? Well, you put a posting out there. People send in their resumes. You might end up doing an interview on Zoom, and then you bring them in after, weeks of, job searching and applying and all of that stuff. You finally get in to wherever your client is. But what I love about the community is that, as Andrea said, we get to know them. So this is like another level that's way past the interview stage. This is getting to know their energies, their how positive they are, how quickly they respond. That's an important element. So when you're working with clients, you want to be able to respond quickly and in a very nice way too. So we're able to really get to see and get to know the people well ahead of time before we start selecting candidates.
Nice. Let me ask you Joe's question here. What do you find is people's biggest issue / confidence challenge, et cetera, when trying to build their ID work up?
Yeah. And of course I was typing as you were going to ask, but what I'll say, and then add some detail about what I said there. I would say, even if it's not explicitly talked about, I think mentally just being like, okay, I've been doing this salaried work, either as an ID or something adjacent to it, or maybe they're new to the field and they have a degree, or they're just getting into it, but wondering, what is it that I'm actually going to be doing in these gigs, right? Am I making storyboards? Am I making a video? Am I doing, a Rise course or storyline? Because even in like the gig description, sometimes that can just change, right? Or just be vague, and you don't really know until you get into the gig. So part of it is probably that feeling, and I hate using the cliche term imposter syndrome, but like, am I really going to be able to do this when I've been doing just this certain type of work at my job? Because instructional design can mean anything at any company, honestly. And just realizing and getting over that hump of like, you know what? It sounds like something I can do, so I'm just going to go for it. And whatever happens, happens. But making that push to actually start going for stuff and contacting potential clients and applying for things. And also, I think one of the confidence issues is like, oh, am I going to make money? What about, there's a month I don't get a gig, and what if I take on too much? What if I take on too little, and all of that. So we kind of coach people and help them realize, like, hey, if you take on too much work, you can always subcontract, or just say yes to something until you have to say no. Like, say yes, like, oh yeah, I'm available, I can do that, because you never really know what the details are going to be or what the actual start date is going to be until you are in it, or until you're in those deeper conversations with the client. And probably just finding clients in the first place, like, where do we even start? And to that, we talk about, finding indirect clients, where maybe there's a freelancer who has taken on too much work and you can subcontract for them, or you find a business like us or an agency and things like that. So we try to think of all those little pesky things that are kind of getting in the way of people starting to own their careers, and try and jumpstart them.
Yeah. And I think another challenge that freelancers face is underestimating their time. They don't quote a high enough quote to the client, and they'll use up their hours quicker than they know it. So it's having the confidence to say, yes, this is what it's going to cost, and live with that. So talking to some people that have been in the industry for a while, ask them about how they do fixed pricing versus hourly rates, things like that. And also just being able to quote accurately so that you can have a little bit of kitty in case something, extra happens during that project, because you don't want to be shortchanging yourself.
Yeah. And I would say we talk a lot about graduating your rate as you get more experience as a freelancer. So like, you get some gigs under your belt, maybe at like an introductory rate, let them know, like, hey, like, I really want to work with you, I can offer you this rate. And then in the future, you kind of give yourself a raise. But just getting your foot in the door, getting some things under your belt to say, like, hey, I'm freelancing, I'm doing it. And then as time goes on and you build more clients and you get things rolling and things are flowing, like, you can give yourself a raise. We talk about that a lot, instead of just going straight in and saying, I'm an expert already, pay me lots of money. You kind of.
Yeah. I have seen several freelancers go out there right away to start charging $120 an hour or whatever it might be. Actually, talked to one recently a few months ago, was charging $140 an hour. And reality is that, if you can get all the business at that rate, great, go for it. The reality is that clients will often turn you down because they can find somebody just as good for way less. So that's just something to think about, is pricing your rates. We use a typical graduating scale that Andrea mentioned. Was, if you're just starting out, you could do, like, say, 35 to 45 an hour. And, you might have some other work on the side just to kind of keep the money coming in. But if you offer that rate and you can show yourself that you have this great talent, it's hard for others to compete with you, but you're getting the experience. You start to build that portfolio. And then as you get more clients over time, go up to 45 to 55 an hour, sort of like that experience rate, or growth rate rather. And then finally, just get up into that $60, $70, $75 an hour range, or higher if you feel that you can get that. So you just kind of build up over time, and you'll find that that works quite well as far as getting that initial base of clients.
Right. Yeah. And Bernadette has a comment in here that it was going through my head, because I know that I'm going to have, we had a huge influx of, like, the teachers turning to instructional design over the last couple of years, but just the levels of experience that IDLance is experiencing or having to assess. Like, Bernadette's asking, what constitutes an expert? And I'm just wondering, for those folks that might be listening or watching that might be new to instructional design, but definitely like the idea of freelancing because of the freedom and the gig variety and things like that. Like, how do you assess that whole thing?
Yeah, we can. Probably a good example of how we assess is how we've run our first cohort. So we actually have sort of a list of competencies in client relations, owning and running your business, and ID skills. And so for those cohort members, we actually had, either prove with something you've already done, right? Because it's competency based, or do this exercise and we'll evaluate it to see that you're, checking those things off. So an expert also, I kind of am of the field. I wrote in that comment that like I kind of hate that term because we're all individuals and we're all going to have our own way of doing whatever the tasks are. But I would say like having confidence dealing with clients and knowing how to navigate tricky situations, but also make them feel comfortable and want to work with you again and even be like fun to work with. That is something that we look for. In terms of ID skills, writing is huge because that is kind of the basis of everything. Even though you might just be a storyline developer, you need to be able to have an eye and say like how should this text flow, what's the tone like, and all of that. Visuals, I know Parker and I talk about this all the time, that visuals, like, yeah, we're not all going to be the best graphic designers, but the truth is if you can if you are good enough to sort of get buy-in and even be able to art direct and be able to tell people what you want or use Canva or something. Yeah, I'm trying to, what else am I missing, Parker?
Oh, well, I mean, expert is a tough thing to define, obviously, but I find people who have multifaceted experiences are those that tend to be able to solve problems better. Those that have been in the L&D field in different aspects of that world. Being able to know what it's like to work in a classroom as a teacher or in a corporate classroom as a trainer, or just being able to know how to write with different tones and writing copy for, let's say, advertising versus writing copy for a scenario branch and storyline. So being able to change your tone and being able to change your style, and also just be able to identify what the goals are that the client has. That's not an easy thing, but there are ways to really accurately identify what that client's goal or goals are, and being able to identify what solutions will help close that gap, the performance gap to get to that goal. So I would say an expert are those that are probably well read in many types of models out there for instructional design or learning theory, and also have a lot of practical experiences in various types of clients.
Yeah, and what I just put in the chat is so although I don't like the term expert, what I found at the people that, even though I don't want to use that term, that I feel are experts, is they are able to sort of read a room, assess a situation, and meet the client where they are in like a positive way. And that might mean maybe doing things a little bit differently than they might in an ideal world be able, in an ideal world want to do, but still be able to sort of guide the client in like as a consultant, but also as like a fellow teammate where you're working alongside and not being like, hey, I'm the expert, do it this way. But the real experts are the people who are like, it's almost like, remember Columbo? Remember the show Columbo?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like kind of gently, where you're like, oh yeah, what about this? And you're just like, everything is like so exciting and you're kind of like leading them to what is really going to help them. But also knowing when to give direction and when to take direction from a client and having that nice balance.
Right.
Because if you're too much one way or the other, some problems.
Well, Bernadette has a follow-up comment here. I've heard a lot of IDs specialize in a particular industry, and do you think that's important? And I do think, like when you're talking about defining an expert, there's a distinction too. That are you an expert freelancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, because there could be somebody that's been sitting in the same desk for 25 years, might know every single authoring tool out there and all there is to know about instructional design. But then if you threw them into the freelance world, they just completely, deteriorate. And so would you consider that person an expert versus somebody that can actually go out there and navigate what working as a freelancer requires?
Yeah, it depends on what you're asking if they're an expert in, right?
Right, exactly.
Agree.
So Bernadette's asking, do you think it's important that if you are an instructional designer, should you have your an industry that you specialize in?
That's a good question. I'm interested to hear what Parker has to say. My personal feeling is I even before IDLance, and I have not been like, "Oh, I only, I'm looking at only these specific gigs." Has it organically happened sometimes? Like, I have accidentally fallen into, like, a manufacturing and, like, sales enablement product type thing where you're selling things to people who are, working on construction sites or factories and things like that. But did I have that, like, idea that I'm just gonna seek that out? No, it's for me, sometimes it organically happens, but I've kind of done everything from, like, dental hygiene for stuff like dental hygienist training to legal compliance to the manufacturing to, newborn hearing screening. So, I don't think it's totally necessary, but if there's something you're passionate about and you know about and you have connections and you feel like you wanna go for it, I think that can be effective.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that because yeah, there is a niche that you can find. So you can specialize in a particular industry and just target your market, your audience, in that industry and do very well. So Bernadette has a question about IDs in healthcare. Absolutely. Healthcare ID is a whole different, game than traditional corporate kind of stuff because, you might need medical writers, for instance, from time to time, or you might need medical illustrators and animators to help support your work. And so if you have a website that shows different kinds of medical courses that you put together, then of course you can target hospitals and clinics and things like that, where they say, oh yeah, Bernadette, she specializes in this. Let me give her a call. So the answer is yes. Now, your question about could you design in healthcare with no healthcare experience? Yes, yes you can, because everybody starts somewhere, right? So if you partner up with people who have been in that world for a little bit, and over time you'll be able to get that experience. But it's all key. The key thing is connecting with people who are in that field. And if you need support, you just find another medical writer to work with.
Right. It seems like as a freelancer, you kind of have to be able to be flexible and and be dynamic and be able to accommodate all these different types of subject matters that or industries that might come into play. But I can tell you, having interviewed like hundreds of people through TLDC, if you do have a background in healthcare and you get a healthcare gig, you're going to be a lot more satisfied. Like Parker working as an engineer previously, if doing instructional design work in engineering, that probably is going to be a lot more comfortable for you than jumping into I don't know, dental or something completely different. And I know like a lot of the folks that I talked to that had previous experience in a particular topic and then got to work as an instructional design in that area have just they're so much more satisfied. They love it.
Yeah, I mean, Bernadette's question is really timely because, like right now with IDLance, Andrea and I are working with a physician in Georgia, and we are looking to get into the healthcare industry. And so we're working with a doctor directly and figuring out how we can partner up to get into that industry and finding the right people who will help us with the ID work and development work. So it's just about connecting with people and working together. That's all.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I've got a few more questions here, and I just want to be conscious of time. So I'm gonna ask you this one. Matching. You guys like help with matching instructional designers or freelancers with particular projects, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you look for? Like how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Of course, it depends on what the actual, what the need is, whether we need more of a development person or a writer or developer who's kind of doing it all. Um, we think about who the client is and kind of what their vibe is. Like a, I don't know, Parker. Am I allowed to say company names? Do I say or no? Probably not. I'm not
Probably
gonna
not, yeah.
I'm not gonna do it. But, like, say you have, like, a very, very corporate client,
Yeah.
you know, we'll think about, like, okay, who would be really good on a call, with these people? We look for we kind of think about people like, okay, are they client facing or not client facing? And if they're not yet, we try and mentor them and help them. Um, but we have like a lot, like almost like a log, like a library that we've recently created of like all the people that we've worked with and what their skills are and all of that. But then also when we're putting gigs in our Slack community, we're meeting with new people who have just joined about those gigs, and we get to know them and we get to know their personality. But I would say communication, like be like people who are good communicators, people who have like a positive energy, not a fake positive energy, because we complain about like it's fine to complain. We all complain together. It's cathartic. I don't
Mhm.
mean like this like always has to be happy type thing. I just mean like a down to earth person who has a mindset more of yes than no. And this doesn't mean that we let clients walk all over us, but in terms of like, hey, how can we make this work? Or what's something that we can offer? Or hey, we've hit a roadblock. Like, how can we work together to make this happen? Because we're not setting and forgetting freelancers. We're not setting and forgetting projects. We know what's happening at any project at any given time. We have project management team. We have QA people. So there's more than one set of eyes. You're not just set off on your own. So we really look for people who are collaborating and have the unique set of skills for either that client, like maybe it is a niche industry, and hey, we need someone who has a chemistry background for this veterinary company that's doing stuff with chemistry. I don't know about anything about chemistry. Or we look for those kind of connections and the skills, but honestly, most important is the communication and sort of the can do itness, but in a normal way. Because if we were working with someone who's just seems like they're like a robot,
Mhm.
happiness, it would probably freak us out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so now just a couple more questions. So Parker, I mean, we talked about this a little bit before we went live, but future of instructional design and the role of freelance instructional designers. Now, I know, well, I've just been hearing and I've been seeing it, just it feels like the job market has gotten tougher for a lot of folks, and even and just in instructional design in general. I mean, what are you seeing out there? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, I see a lot of fear today. People are fearful of AI taking over because of what it can do, create storyboards and scripts and all of that. But I also see opportunities because it still requires human beings to work with AI, no matter what. But those who can adapt and use AI in a creative way, I think have a really bright future as instructional designers. So think of it like if you're creating a movie, you need to be a producer, right? So you need to figure out the story, the characters, what the plot is, and the good guys and the bad guys, all of this stuff in a movie. So we know also from learning that stories are powerful at helping people learn. Analogies are powerful to help people learn. But just imagine if we have these AI tools as they develop, that you become a cinematic ID. So think of it that way. Instead of the traditional, hey, I'm going to write a storyboard and putting it into an authoring tool like Storyline and whatnot, think of it like, how do I create an actual scene? So I think the movement, as you'll see, and it's happening today, just like with a little bit of movement to new scenes using Midjourney, right? A lot of stuff could be done with Midjourney. Runway takes your still graphics and turn them into motion. But just imagine what the tools will be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And people are going to start using scenes to help people learn around a particular topic. Just say, going back to Bernadette's question about healthcare, can you imagine just creating an AI scene in an operating room with the right tools, creating the surgery? You can be there. Now, VR might catch on. It's sort of a hard thing to get into right now because VR is just a heavy, clunky kind of a headset. not everybody can use VR because it doesn't sync with the eye very well, and they can kind of feel nauseous at that time. So it's going to be desktop based for a while until maybe they figure out something with the glasses or the goggles. But what I do see is opportunities for IDs to really get to know the AI tools and start thinking like movie producer and thinking about situations, scenes, and that's the future of ID.
Right, right. Okay, very interesting. So last question. IDLance, how do you see it growing in the future? You mentioned that you had your certification that you released recently, but what else you guys have going on?
Yeah, we're hoping to scale the certification program. We're hoping to um keep the really awesome growth that we've seen in terms of our client projects going, because the more projects we have going, the more people we can be helping them grow their careers. And what I love about what we're doing right now is, like, we've given so many people sort of like their start, where because we've gotten to know them and because we have experience with them personally, we're more likely to say, like, oh, I've never done an official corporate instructional design gig before. But when you get to know someone and you meet with them and you see other things that they've done and you know about their career, like, we can be those, take that chance, which isn't really a chance because we know what it's going to be like to work with them. So I'm excited to keep doing more and more of that. The How we can scale, like I said, the certification program. What else, Parker?
Oh yeah, we can't announce anything just yet, but there is something big coming, and it's
In a good way. Not aliens yet.
Yeah. So, but we are looking to grow the ecosystem, and that's where we're excited about, and expanding the community. So we look forward to announcing that later this fall. But that's where we're at right now.
I love it. It's such a human endeavor that you guys have going. It seems like it's all about people. That you guys are this thing you're trying to build, and it really is like helping a lot of folks out there, and I totally admire that. And glad that you're a part of the L&D community, and definitely love pushing people in your direction whenever I see anyone having questions about freelancing. It's like, yeah, go to IDLance, and I do see it come around regularly in the community that you were the go-tos. So congrats on that.
Thanks, and we appreciate that. And it's so hard to we're like people. We really are just people who want to do this. Like, a lot of times you get out there and, like, oh yeah, we want to help people, and then you get into the thing and they're like, they just want my money, or like they just want to fluff their ego and all that. But, like, I just don't know how to, like, I'm just not good at that kind of thing. And I've realized that I'm so glad that we have IDLance, because even working from home, if I was in like a salary job, like, I'm just so lonely all the time. I don't speak to anyone other than like my family. And so I honestly don't know what I would do if we didn't have this community, because a lot of the people that, we're helping have become friends, or they just become part of the network. And it's just, for me, it's just what my life is around now, because that's where all my friends are. And it's been really great to just see it actually helping people, and not just being like a fluffy thing that we say. Like, it's just so cool when someone comes back and goes, hey, remember when we were talking about that thing? Well, I did it, and now I've got all these clients, or now I know how to do this type of project. And that's kind of the best that we could hope for, really.
Yeah. It's fun to have a community to wake up to every day, and it's full of life, and it's vibrant, and we always learn from people in our community. Every day we learn something new. I look into Slack and I find new stuff out there, people posting. I'm like, wow, I never knew that you could do that. So it's really kind of cool. So it's a great way to informally share updates, interesting news, or links to new software, or whatever it might be. It's really cool. And what I love about what we do is, because we put people first, we don't think about like, oh, let's charge, a couple $1,000, make a boot camp out of this, or, an expensive academy or anything like that. We just think about just the community itself, and just let let things go at a natural pace or organically. So that's kind of our philosophy. Just have fun and just be people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. It's interesting hearing that from, since I'm a community founder too, it's like, yeah, I have the same experience. I don't look for clout anywhere because I just, I'm not into that. Like I'm not posting on LinkedIn hardly ever. In fact, it's probably to a fault that I don't go out there and.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, you've grown this.
Oh, it's just
Yeah.
I think it's just more, because it's about people to me, and I just haven't, I'm not trying to sell a bunch of stuff. I'm just trying to help support folks. So I feel like we have very, very similar sort of goals with working with instructional designers. And so it's wonderful to have you on the broadcast. I can't wait to get this out there, and we'll just continue to support IDLance whenever we can. Maybe we can do another freelance event soon.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And and with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I have one more showcase this week. We're going to be talking to Lisa Spurko on Friday. She is a 20+ year veteran in instructional design. Really interested in talking to her. She's in our Slack channel on a regular basis, and it'll be fun to be able to actually speak with her face to face. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out the broadcast. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.